video, the event-driven application basically launches a portion of your code when is needed. Like on that video, someone clicked on a button, and then before the button click event finishes its task and give the report back to the operating system that, hey, I'm done with the clicking, you're basically saying, launch my command, launch my statements, do my task first before you go back to the operating system. So for anything, for click event, for drag drop, for moving, and anything that you perform within the operating system, there is a message going on, and there is an event that gets generated by that particular form, and it will report back to the operating system, says, I'm doing this, I'm clicking, I'm overriding, or perhaps I'm moving from one place to the other. So you can actually capture all these events that are being generated by a particular object within your form, and you can overwrite that. You can write your own functionalities in it. So let's take a look at some of these examples. For example, if you have a form basically has many different properties, many different functionality, as well as events. Form is an object that Microsoft has designed. So basically there are some pre-written events that Microsoft say, these are the events that you can capture and write code in it. One of the events, as an example, is load. On load event, you can basically capture the event procedure for it and write code in it. For example, as soon as a form gets loaded, you could say that, do something, like initialize some variables. Maybe you want to connect to a database. Maybe you want to check the user authentication. You could do lots of different things in it. But before the form gets shown, the form load occurs. That means by the time a form gets loaded into the memory, right before it really goes and shows itself into the display, you want to do something. That's the place you want to write code for it. Or another example, like you have a button on your form. You want to click on that button. So on the click event of it, you want to do something. As soon as you click on the button, you want to do something. And then after you did whatever you needed, then you can have the form to continue with the rest of the operation. Or on the text name, on the text box, someone enters a value. As soon as they enter a value by any key press, you are changing the value, original value of the text box. You want to capture the event. On the change event of a text box, perhaps you want to go and read the information about the ASCII key that is being entered within the text box, and basically you can have that to be converted into an uppercase. Or you might want to check the value on it. If it's a text, you don't allow that. You beep instead. If it's a numeric, you allow it. If it's within a specific range, you do whatever. So these are the events that you can actually overwrite and do lots of different things with it. So basically, every single event procedure, you see I'm naming it again as a procedure. We have already discussed sub-procedures in the previous chapter. Now I'm talking about event procedures. Event procedures are pre-written procedures that Microsoft provides to you. And you're not making it up. They have to be valid. And how do you know that? Each object has some associative events with that particular object. Like in the case of command button, you got click event. In the case of text, for example, you have change event. On the form, you got load event. So they got to be valid events. That's what they call them, event procedures. There's one more procedure left that we haven't talked about yet. They call it function procedures. So you have really many different types of procedures that we are dealing with. I've already shown you sub-procedures. You have already seen some of the examples of function procedures like message boxes or input boxes that return a value back to you. And then we have event procedures that are really running something if something happens. So let's take a look at some of these examples. The name of the control itself with underscore and the event name identifies the name of the event procedure. Be careful, write down in here. If you're placing a control on your form, and then you are writing a code for the event procedure, and then you go back later on and change the name of that control, your event procedures won't work. Please pay attention to this demonstration. If I switch back to my Access, right now I like to create a brand new form, and I just go with the design view. On this form, I like to place a button in here. And within this button, as you see, automatically pops up with a screen as far as the wizard goes. This is kind of advanced. We don't want to talk about it right now because you can associate this button to automatically do something for you. Microsoft make the job a lot easier to write programs. So I just don't want to talk about it right now because we want to do in a hard way. We want to learn how to do really a program without using any wizard. I right-click on this particular button. I select Properties. First, let's go and name this button to be, for example, CMD Say Hi. And then, of course, on the caption, I say hello or say hi, whatever you want to name it. I select the button itself. If I select a specific property in here, as you see, the name is onClick. If I try to choose an event procedure in here and click on this build button, automatically pops up with a module for that form. This is a form module. Before, I've shown you how to create your own module in previous section of the course. But here now you're dealing with the form module. So basically a form is a module but has graphical elements associated with that module. So it gives you even more than a regular module. But the flexibility, functionality of it is exactly the same as a module. Your module is not necessarily graphical, but the form module is also graphical. So let's take a look at this. If you recall, I talked about the object box, didn't I? The object box in module was only referring to the module itself. But now, part of the form, you have a form, you have a command, and you have just the detailed information of that particular form. So as you see, every single object has its own events associated with that. In the case of a command button, we can associate a click event, double click event, enter if someone press an enter, exit if they press escape, key down, key up, whatever you like. You can actually capture them. In the case of a form, there are a variety of other events like load, unload, query unload, bunch of other events that are available in VBA. So for the sake of discussion, on the command say hi, as soon as I click on it, I like to show a message box. Let's check it out. I show a message box and I say hi or hello from Apex. Hello from Apex Infotech. Let's go test that. If I launch this, it automatically points to the module that I'm running right now. I don't want to actually run that. If I cancel that, let's go back to the form. And on the form, if I click on the form section here, if I view it, I can test my form literally by clicking on it. If I click say hello, automatically runs my statement. Now, let's put a breakpoint and see how it really is happening. If I go back to the Visual Basic Code, if I press a breakpoint by clicking on the left margin on the gray area, or basically pressing F9, toggling F9, you can put a breakpoint or not. Let's switch back here on the form and click say hello. You see what happened? The click happened, but now whatever is inside of that click event procedure will be executed. So if I step into it, you see hello from Apex Infotech will occur. Let's go and put a message box on the form load event now. Let's go ahead and say message box. This is the form load event procedure. Let's see how this one works. If I switch back in here, close my form, save my form as my form, for example, and my module, for example, as my second module. These are coming back from the previous demonstration, of course. Now, this is my form. If I just double click on it, automatically the form load event occurred. So whatever code I have within the form load will happen or will be executed and then comes back to the form. And then if I click the button itself, it comes back to that particular procedure. Of course, you got the point and you know how event procedures work within Access programming. So as you saw in the previous demonstration, in order to add an event procedure, all you need to do, select that specific control and then go to the properties of it and choose the particular events that you're interested in, select the event procedure and click on the build button. And that automatically brings up the module editor and simply you can go ahead and write code for it. So I've already demonstrated how to do this. And of course, there's a video in which you can go and view it again as a review on your own time. So let's move on and talk about events. What can we do with the events anyways? As I demonstrated, a simple message box, showed the power of event. But really, what can we do with the events? Let's get into it. You could do many things in Access. Like perhaps you could open a form from a specific form, you could open another form. You could open another report. That was one of the requirements of Hansen Brothers, if you remember. We needed to put a button, click on it, and open a report. So let's go practice that. Let's see how do we do this. Well, basically, in order to open a form, when a user opens a form in Access, the form is first loaded into the memory and then open. The loading and opening actions on forms triggers the open and load events. That's part of Access programming. So in order to open, in this scenario, on the form open event, we could actually ask a user to enter a username and a password. That's for security. So before you allow somebody to come and really show a form, you could basically ask for authentication. Who are that person? Or who is that person? Who are you that you're trying to open that form? So basically, here, you're asking a user to enter a password, like within an input box. If the password is equal to whatever you set in here, basically you allow it. Otherwise, you just don't allow that. By the way, the form open, it takes one argument as type of cancel. The cancel, if you set it to be true, basically what's happening, you're just canceling the action. If I'm supposed to open a form, if I set the cancel to be true, I'm not opening it. So I'm undoing the action. I am undoing the action if the cancel is true. So if the password is anything but the password, you're undoing the action. Like nothing has happened. You let the access know, ignore this action. Another example in here is talking about load. On the load event, you're asking to see what's the name, and then you're greeting that person. Welcome to this program, and so forth. Other things you could do. Like, for example, you could navigate through records, which we haven't talked about it yet. In Chapter 8, we will discuss, record modification, navigation, and so forth. But I'm just showing you the possibilities of what you can do within these events. You could actually go through navigation. To manipulate data in a database, the user navigates through records. So while navigating, the user can delete records as well. Well, basically, the navigation and delete action trigger the current and delete events. The current event occurs when the focus moves to a record. So basically, you are referring to the current record, whichever record that you're pointing to. So making it the current record. Or when the form is refreshed or queried, you're basically looking at one record. So that becomes your current record. Some of the examples are listed in here. Like whenever the current event triggers is like when a new record becomes current, or when a customer records become current, or supplier records becomes current, or any information that has something to do with the record itself becomes current, means the record that you are viewing at the moment, that triggers the current event. So what you can do with it? As you see, one of the nice things that you could do with the form underscore current event is to show the caption of that particular, record name, or maybe you could show exactly what record they are viewing, just as additional helper. As far as the delete, whenever you're deleting a record, the delete event occurs. Again, like the open, you have the cancel. You could undo it. You could ask a user, are you sure that you want to delete this? Because maybe some people by accident want to delete it. As you see here, you see continue with the delete, yes, no. It's not a bad idea to do this technique, otherwise they might lose some data. By the time you're closing the form, there is an event occurs before you really terminate it or close it. They call it unload. If you recall, at the beginning of the form load, you could initialize some variables. Well, obviously, if you're setting some variables to be set inside of the memory, it's not a bad idea to clean them up before you close the entire object. Because if I declare a variable inside of the memory, and then if I close my form without getting rid of it, I'm actually causing memory glitch. And you have seen that problem many, many times by the time you're using someone else's application, perhaps, buying some cheesy software that you have bought, perhaps from, market. Well, basically, they are causing memory glitches, and that's why Windows needs to be restarted over time. But if you clean up after you're done with the object itself, you're getting rid of all those garbages inside of the memory. So one of the ways that you can clean up is using the unload event of your form. In this scenario, you can again ask to see if the person is really interested in order to close the form. Give it a second chance, because perhaps they have clicked on the exit on the form itself accidentally. And then on the close event, really, you could basically do the closing. The close event happens when you're done with the cleaning up procedure. There's a practice in which allows you to go and work with the form load and basically form close events. Now, if you're not dealing with the form object alone and you're dealing with the controls within the form, there are some events associated with that control itself. So up to this point, I was just talking about the form module events. Now let's talk about control events. The control events are really specific to a specific control. Not necessarily all controls that have the same exact event. For example, in the case of label, nobody clicks on a label, but people click on a button, or perhaps they click on a text box. But what do you want to do when you click on a text box? So you have to think about what event is appropriate for a specific control. Based on that, you can start doing the programming. In the case of a button, basically you're dealing with a click event. I've already demonstrated that. In the case of a double click, maybe clicking is different from double clicking. You could actually set that up, mouse down, mouse up. You could do lots of different events in there. One of the things that you have to be familiar with is got focus or loss focus. Got focus and loss focus are excellent for validation. Consider a scenario that you have a text box or many text boxes, and then you enter value in them. You want to do user validation when you move out of that text box by pressing a tab key, for example, or clicking on a mouse on another button. As soon as you lost the focus on that control, you want to do validation perhaps. Or by the time you come to that control, you want to do some other things. So the got focus event occurs when a control receives the focus, means you're there, the cursor insertion point in that control, or surrounded that control like a button. So in this scenario, there's an option button, like the option buttons that you can select either on or off section of it. You could say option button yes. You could say yes, the current selection is yes. In this scenario, as soon as the got focus happened, you could set the variable. You could actually prompt yourself. You could do many things. Instead of the loss focus event, it's totally an opposite action. Got focus is whenever you're pointing your cursor on that particular control. Loss focus is whenever you're moving out of that control. Then you have change. The change event occurs when the value of that control changes it. Well, the change event is not necessarily adequate for button. The change event is good for text, is good for combo boxes perhaps, is good for list boxes, things that they have value and you can change them. And then, of course, just in case you're dealing with the combo boxes, there's a particular event called not in list. The not in list event occurs when the user enters a value in a combo box that isn't in the combo box list. Well, what do you want to do with it? You want to add that to your combo box? Or you don't want to accept it. Maybe your combo box is read-only. Maybe your combo box is not modifiable. So the not in list event occurs only if the limit to list property of the combo box is set to yes. Means if you have, for example, got 10 items within your combo box and someone enters a value in there, you don't allow that, for example, to be added to your combo box list, or you want to do some actions with it. These are some of the examples of events that are available. Like, for example, in the case of a not in list, you could show a message box that the value that you entered, which is the new data that is coming to you by the combo box itself, doesn't exist in the list. Please pick a value from the list. And then basically you could capture that. Another example is before update and after update events. The before and after update events are triggered when a control or a record is changed. So before you change it or after you change it, do you still want to do something? These are additional steps. Perhaps you say, do I have to override all these events? The answer is really no. It depends on your program logic. What do you want to do with your program? In this example, on the text address, before you update it, you might want to ask. After you update it, you might want to verify. Or you might want to save the data. There's another practice that allows you to work with the control events.